Hi, welcome to the Sales Readiness Group podcast. I'm Ray Makela, and I'm really excited to be joined today by Andre Yee, who is the CEO of Tiga AI. And we're going to take a deep dive into the practice around applying AI in the sales process and what we can do to enable teams. And I think Andre has some very exciting tools and techniques and an application to share that we will explore in detail, and also, see how quickly this space is changing as we're all trying to, kind of get our arms around it and figure out how to make sense of this. So thrilled to have the audience joining us today. We will keep this very conversational, and just in previous conversations with Andre, I'm really looking forward to this, and I plan on learning a lot about this. So Andre, maybe you just kick things off. We could have you introduce yourself, say a little bit, about your background. I know you come from a technology and a sales and marketing background, so great experience that you're bringing to Tiga AI. And then maybe you could share, what was the impetus behind creating Tiga, and what problem are you solving with it?
Yeah. So first of all, Ray, thank you for having me on your podcast. I've been looking forward to this conversation. A little bit about me. I've spent the last 17 years in sales and marketing tech. I was originally with a company called Eloqua. We're kind of the pioneers in marketing automation. That was a great run, great company, great people.
Yeah.
Ended up doing an IPO and exiting to Oracle for, a little less than $1 billion. A lot of my fellow executives, I ran all of product development, but a lot of my fellow executives, when looking for the next Eloqua, I thought I could build the next Eloqua, so I started a company called Triblio. We were an account-based marketing platform, competed with the likes of Demandbase, Terminus, and we ended up, growing the business and had a very successful exit to IDG, a National Data Group. I stayed with IDG for about 2.5 years, helped them build a business unit around our product. And in January, February of last year, I left IDG to start Tiga. So I left because I want to explore what's next, and ended up starting Tiga. And part of the reason, since you asked, part of the reason I ended up starting Tiga was really, when I was exploring what's next, I spoke to a lot of go-to-market leaders in my network. And what I was really surprised was, I would say, 80% of them were sort of like expressing this notion that they feel like their go-to-market approach was not working quite right. Everyone was sort of rethinking their go-to-market, and there were a lot of different reasons for that. But essentially, that sort of led me to Tiga, to start Tiga. It's essentially I think we're in a transitional moment. We've had essentially the same go-to-market playbook for the last 12 or 15 years, and I think that's in radical transition right now.
Yeah, well, maybe just to educate our team a little bit, can you talk a little bit about then what problem Tiga solves, how you're approaching, and we'll dive into that in more detail.
Yeah, so, in sort of speaking to these go-to-market leaders, I think there were certain themes that not everyone said, but there were some recurring sort of, themes that came up. One was, the SDR math isn't adding up. And by that, I mean, we have had for the last dozen years, we lived in an era of cheap capital. The idea was hire large teams of SDRs and use mass market outreach methods to generate leads, right? And that ROI on that wasn't quite adding up. The effectiveness was decreasing. That was one challenge. The other was they kind of noted that there was a challenge around sales teams having very limited time to sell. And as I dug into that, I noticed that Salesforce actually released a state of selling report that says that most sales teams only spend 28% of their time in direct selling activity, which is shocking to me, actually. Yeah. But actually, since then, I've talked to a number of folks, experts like you, and you've said, no, that sounds about right. And then probably the last challenge is that these mass market outbound methods that we've been using are hitting a wall. They're not working the way they kind of used to. And so these are the kinds of problems we're solving for. And in the process of sort of talking to a lot of these GTM leaders, I was trying to get to the heart of one fundamental question. I was trying to find out, what do the best sellers do, especially when it comes to prospecting and building the pipeline, right? And what I found was that most of the best sellers do a very similar thing. It involves deep research of the accounts that they're assigned. They try to make relational connection with the buyers in those accounts, and they typically reach out on the basis of insights or signals, if you want to think of it that way. And so that was a common pattern that I saw. And the challenge behind doing that, as someone said to me, she said, I talked to an AE that was just brilliant, and her name was Amanda. She said, hey, this is great, but it takes a lot of time. And so in essence, this sort of motion of deep research, relational connection, and sort of insight-based interactions or signal-based interactions, that's what we're solving for. We're going to help you do that at scale, essentially, right? Because it takes a lot of time. It's very aspirational for a lot of sales teams to do that, even like SDR teams, but it's very difficult to execute at scale. And so that's essentially what we help you do, is research at scale, relationally connect at scale. And we look for these insights and these signals that allow you to reach out to the buyer at the right time.
Well, and it's so exciting because at the time where AI is evolving to a point where it can really help now, like it's good enough and the tools are there that we can enable that. And that theme really resonates with me. It's interesting with some of the SBI research that we've been doing. Your comment around the sales math, I mean, it's brilliant, because we see that again and again, where the premise of growth is predicated on just adding more headcount. And oftentimes, and especially with a PE-backed or venture-backed, and it's like, well, we just add headcount and they produce X amount of revenue, and then we get to our number. And it really doesn't take productivity into account. It doesn't take ramp-up time, or at least the assumptions around ramp-up time are flawed. And even the fact that most reps don't end up hitting the targets that we're going to set for them. And we know that they are underachieving, at a pretty high degree. So what can we do to improve their productivity? And to your point, if we can speed that up and enable them to do better research, build those connections and relationships better, and then bring those insights in a way that's very tailored, I think that's a game changer. And that results in productivity gains without adding more headcount, which is really expensive, right?
Yeah. And yeah, that's exactly right, Ray, because, there's a lot of talk about AI replacing humans. Like if you open if you kind of like browse the web, you'll see there's a lot of concern about AI replacing humans, right? In fact, one of the ways we describe ourselves at Tiga is we say, we're an AI assistant, right? We have essentially an AI assistant to amplify human-centric selling. And what we mean by that, we're saying that in a very particular way, because we think there's a kind of selling, B2B selling, probably the kind of selling that a lot of your clients do, that really is human to human, and it's going to be that way for the foreseeable future. Let's just say for the next 15 years, it's going to be human to human, right? And for us, the question isn't really about how do we replace the human. It's really about how do we amplify the human seller, right? How do we amplify the selling team so that they're not just 20% better, but they're 2x more productive, right? So that really, what you just said, speaks to the heart of why we exist as a company. Is that's our noble sort of cause, is we want to make it better. We want to help sales teams be more effective.
Yeah, well, and again, really exciting to see that evolve, because I think elevating the sales profession, not automating, but taking it up. And I mean, I'm a big Satya Nadella fan, from Microsoft and kind of his vision. And I've heard him say, the promise is not that it's going to outsource or automate all these jobs. The promise is it removes some of those mundane and repetitive tasks and frees us up to be more human, right? To make those human connections, to build the relationships. And, as you're talking about, to be more relevant to our customers, which is really what they want, right? That's what they've been telling us for years is, well, we want you to understand our business and understand our vision and understand how, as a partner, you can help us, not just how you can pitch your product better. And so, I think that this helps enable that.
There are, if you hang around sales teams, there are, remember that there's a show, Dirty Jobs. I don't know if you
Yeah.
that show. Yeah, there are sales dirty jobs that no one likes to do. There are things like, hey, update your CRM, or actually research the accounts, and or come up, reach out to the buyers in those accounts. A lot of I've heard from a lot of salespeople. One of them said, I became a person because I love being in front of clients. I love having client meetings. I don't like having to get client meetings. I don't like having to actually do the nitty gritty work of researching. And that's partly what we're here to do. Is as you were quoting from Satya, just we're here to help them do some of those dirty jobs, those a lot of busy work, right? So
Yeah. Well, and we'll get into that in more detail. But I think, yeah, if 70% of their time is not selling with a customer, what are they doing? Yeah. And if we can offload some of that, so that they can be more focused and more effective when they get in front of the customer, that's going to pull through in, better win rates and shorter sales cycles and, all the metrics.
Yeah.
Brandon.
Yeah, exactly.
One of the things I wanted to explore too, Andre, we just published some research on buyer friction that's really fascinating, talking about, what's changing and why it really does feel harder to sell in today's environment. And, not only are there more buyers involved, we've known that for years, and even some of these transient buyers, right? They kind of swoop in and out, and we kind of lose track of who's on the buying committee. But also that there's just so much change going on. Buying teams are impacted, and sometimes the team is different by the time we get to the end of the deal than we started with, or their businesses change. And so one of the things we feel really strongly about is we need to understand all of those buying influences, and it's hand-to-hand combat, right? It's a one-to-one with each member, not as, there's one persona that you're selling to. Can you talk a little bit about how Tiga would help, support that particular use case, if you will? Because I think we need to get better at knowing who all those individuals are and targeting individual personas and what they care about.
Yeah, absolutely. First of all, I think you're absolutely right. The sort of idea of the buying group and the complexity of selling to the buying, ever increasing, ever large, increasing in size buying group is a challenge. I would say the other challenges that sales teams face is getting buyer attention, right?
Yeah.
Everyone is, the way we've gone about in outbounding the last decade has all been around mass market outreach methods, with these armies of SDRs, right? So that makes getting buyer attention more challenging. What I'm saying is that the future of prospecting is going to be a lot more thoughtful. It's going to involve research. And then to your point, it will involve research not only of the company, but also of the different buyers in the buying group, the different people in the buying group, right? And understanding who they are, what their background, understanding their background, understanding what are they saying and doing on LinkedIn, what's of interest to them, understanding the right time to reach out to the buying group, right? Based on something that's happened in the life of the buyer. For instance, you might have a buying group and a person in the buying group gets promoted, right? And maybe it's not an explicit selling opportunity, but it's an explicit relational opportunity, actually.
Yep.
And I think relationships are going to be more important than ever in this new phase that we're in, where a lot of there's a lot of personalization that you can enable through AI and all that. I think relationship building is important. So what we do with Tiga is we help you research, we help you identify these signals, which essentially are events or triggers in the life of the account or the person, and we help you give you an opportunity to reach out to them. Like I said, not always with an explicit selling opportunity, but with an opportunity to connect and to build the relationship. And sometimes it will mean a selling opportunity and an opportunity to convert that into a meeting. But that's number one. And then the other is, just being able to, craft the right messaging, both over social and over email, and reaching out to them, right? And actually executing a play. And so, yeah, so that's essentially, what our AI can do is actually tailor the right message based on your persona. So, it actually looks at your role, your title, and it'll tailor the message based on, what your role is. If you and that's because if you're pitching to a C-level executive, that's going to sound very different from if you're pitching to an end user, right? So, yeah, that's some of the stuff that we can do.
Mm-hmm. So maybe for our audience, you could even provide a little bit more detail around, how Tiga works in that capacity, because I'm struck, and we've had this conversation, so it's interesting. I think a good account executive who understands Chat GPT and, is maybe pushing the envelope a little bit can go in and define a custom GPT, and, maybe they can create some of their own capabilities around that. Whether they'll do that or not, I think is another question. But can you talk about how does Tiga go beyond that, and what are we getting, or what are we able to do with some of the capabilities that you bring to bear that, they wouldn't just be able to do with an OpenAI account?
Yeah, you're reminding me of the prior conversation you and I had where, you were saying a lot of salespeople are trying to use ChatGPT, and my typical view about ChatGPT is that ChatGPT is essentially like the Excel spreadsheet for generative AI. You can use a spreadsheet for anything, like plan your vacation, run your business. I mean, it's powerful and amazing that way, right? But what happened with the early days of the spreadsheet is eventually, there were purpose-built applications that came along, and these purpose-built applications were fit to the use case and the end user's workflow, right? And that is partly what ChatGPT doesn't have right now. There are a number of different things, but one is that, as you and I had talked previously, I said, I'm not sure it's reasonable to expect most salespeople to be prompt engineers. You're going to find some really technical sales folks with initiative to actually learn how to be a prompt engineer. But in my opinion, you and I have had the discussion. In my opinion, no, that's not going to be your rank and file salesperson. And that's probably, in my view, not a reasonable expectation if you're going to operationalize generative AI for sales. Yeah. So that's one of the things is we take away the need for you to be a prompt engineer so that you can generate good sales emails. The other thing is that a lot of the work that salespeople do, when you get right down to it and you look at some of the stuff that they do, they actually, when they're prospecting, they're actually looking for these signals or insights that give them an entry point to have a discussion, right? And what I found was a lot of these are manually derived, manually generated. They spend a lot of time looking for these signals. Like I'll give you an example. Like one of our clients does outsourced marketing services, provides outsourced marketing services. They said, yeah, we like to find companies in our ICP that are posting for jobs that are marketing ops or marketing campaign management jobs, because that's an opportunity for us to offer our service. We have another client that's a managed service provider, also very similar use case. So there are different kinds of use cases. Another company said, I look for retailers that announce new store openings, right? And then that's a great time to approach them. These are very custom signals, if you would. One of the things we do is, and today a salesperson has to sort of like read announcements, go through, what a person might post on LinkedIn. What we do is we turn generative AI not just to the generation of emails. We do that, but we also apply generative AI to derive signals, buying signals and buying behaviors that matter to your business, so that this is the right time to reach out to this particular client, right? So I think that's part of what we do as sort of the big picture.
Well, I think what's really resonates with me about that is, as you said, they're doing it, but they're, how much time are they spending perusing LinkedIn, right? Or going and just, trying to find some announcement, or going to a website and looking at a press release. And that's super time consuming. And it's also a little bit of a needle in a haystack of, if you have 100 target accounts you're going after, trying to find those appropriate signals at the right time. Versus one of the things that Gen AI does really well is process large amounts of information and distill it down into key attributes you're looking for. And, it doesn't get tired or doesn't get bored or distracted doing that. It just does it.
Yeah.
So it strikes me that once you can define what those signals are that you're looking for, it can do that at scale and provide it, essentially in real time. And that's very exciting to be able to have that kind of actionable information. And then you can turn it into that outbound script or that cadence or sequence, whatever you need to do to act on it.
Absolutely. In fact, you're reminding me of something actually. I was talking to a prospect yesterday, and she said, "Oh, when you say Tiga is an AI assistant, you really mean it." And that's something that what Tiga really is an sales AI agent, meaning it can act semi-autonomously, so to speak. You give it some broad instructions. You say, "Hey, look for these signals." You tell it, when you find these signals, generate an email, that kind of thing. That's the kind of thing that you can't really do with ChatGPT, because it doesn't, it's ChatGPT is driven by your initiative to write something in to give it an instruction, right? And it's when that instruction is over, it's done, right? But you can actually give sort of long-term instructions, if you would, to Tiga as a sales AI agent, and it will carry out these instructions, like I said, semi-autonomously.
No, I think that's really exciting. And yeah, I mean, it just improves your effectiveness and your efficiency. So it speeds it up, but it also means you have better insights to share at the right time as you're going about that and putting it into play. Yeah, it's going to be interesting to just see how that all evolves. I'm curious, we've talked a little bit about adoption before, and that's the thing. I mean, we're in the training business, right? So getting people to change behaviors is hard. Getting them to try and use new skills is hard. It strikes me with this, certainly there's a what's in it for them. If they can see, oh, this could help actually do things quicker and maybe I can close more business, but we still have to get them to use it. And maybe you could talk a little bit about, the challenge of adoption and what you've seen with some of your clients on, getting people to actually put this into play.
Yeah, I think I'm going to just start by saying this. I think that this next 2 to 3 years are going to be very definitive in sort of the world of B2B sales. And the reason I say that is I think that everyone is trying to figure out how to leverage AI for sales. I think that's happening right now. Not all organizations, but a lot of organizations are trying to figure that out. And I do think that when I say the next 3 years are going to be definitive, what I mean is that when you get to the other side of this, there are going to be organizations that figured it out, probably with help from folks like yourself. And they're going to figure it out. And they're not just, like I said, they're not just going to be 20%, improved. They're going to be 2x more productive, 3x more productive. It's not incremental, it's exponential, So I think that's the first thing I want to say is, that's the compelling reason they should be looking into this, but I also think that in fairness, I think there's the adoption is challenging because I think from a vendor's perspective, because I've seen this multiple times when I saw it with Eloqua, as we were sort of the pioneers in marketing automation. I saw it with Triblia. We were among the first companies with account-based marketing. And here's the reality. When you want the market to adopt a technology or a new approach, it's not just about technology. It's not just about the vendor. It is about the ecosystem. So, that I was eager to speak with you because I actually think in the next 3 years, there's probably more money to be made in consulting than there is in product, because I know for a fact there are a lot of companies that are sitting there saying, I'd like to do this. How do I start? How do I get going? What are the best practices? What are the organizational implications? How do I need to change? How do I, what can I expect in terms of ROI? All those questions need to be answered, and they aren't always best answered by the vendor, by someone like me. They're sometimes best answered by partners, right? By consultants, by advisory services. That's a very important piece of the adoption, how to get more adoption. But yeah, I think that's where the market's at right now. There are a lot of people intrigued and trying things out. I think we're actually kind of early, but I think it's starting to pick up speed. I don't know. What do you think, Ray? I mean, that's what I see, and I'm kind of curious because you work with these organizations every day.
Yeah, I mean, I think it is a challenge. I think we see a wide variety of places that are really embracing, and they're like, yes, let's use it, let's get it out there, let's figure out what makes sense. And then we have other organizations where you can't even load it on your device, or they're blocking it, and people are bringing their own phones or their own iPads so that they can actually have access outside the firewall. So I think we see a real mix, and for justified reasons when there's security and confidentiality concerns, and they aren't necessarily sure what that means for some of their existing policies and security. But having said that, I think those that embrace and just get it out and start working, and figure out, I think this is going to be iterative. And so the best technology deployments I've seen is where we get it into the hands of some people that start using it and sharing the success stories. So whether that's the pilot group or the super user group, but they're out there, and then you hear the stories, right? Of, oh my goodness, they had a 10x improvement in the number of meetings they booked. Let's pay attention to that and let's celebrate that. So I think we get those evangelists out there. We start to build a groundswell, and we start collecting the stories. And who doesn't love a good story? But how is this actually working in the real world? I think that's key. And Microsoft just came out with a study on adoption of AI, and that was one of the. I mean, it's change management, right? Why do people need to change, or what's in it for them, and then what's happening that they should pay attention to, and can we get people out there that are paving the way or showing the way forward, not try to do everything at once. And I think we do see that where, if you have 500 people in the organization and you're trying to say, okay, we're going to train everybody to do their own prompt engineering and use Chat GPT, you're never going to scale that consistently. And you're never really probably going to get the benefit. You'll get some benefit, but can you package it in a way to make it more digestible and have a tool that you can, constrain it a little bit and make it a lot easier for them to get their head around. So yeah, those are some of the things we're seeing.
Yeah, it's true. I see with a lot of organizations, they go through this process of exploratory process where they're trying to figure out what's possible. Like what can generative AI do for me in the sales organization? So there's what's possible. Then it's kind of like, how do I get started? Then it's, how do I operationalize this? How do I measure results, right? That is sort of this maturity thing. A lot of organizations today are still wrestling with the first question. They're trying to educate themselves in terms of what's possible. And we obviously love for them to take a look at what we're doing. But there are a lot of different players out there. And I think it's a really exciting time for sales, and especially I think for, experienced consultants like yourself. So
no, it's very, very exciting. And yeah, I think the looking at those areas where there's friction, or there's a real problem to solve, but it's not the highest stakes in the organization. Like, it's not a mission critical life control system. So in other words, you want to start where the stakes are lower, but where you can show some real benefit. And then I think that starts to create some momentum, if you can figure out, which I think research is one of those things. Hey, if we can automate, speed that up, and it's not going to ruin our whole sales process, but if we can make that more efficient and effective, there's a big payoff. So let's start there versus, using it to do contract management or close deals for us or something. And then we find out
exactly
wrong.
Exactly. That's precisely correct. Yeah.
So, I just wanted to touch on a couple of other themes, and then I'll let you go. But, one of the things is we work a lot with frontline managers and sales leaders. And I'd love for you to share, I mean, maybe you have some stories with clients or how you're seeing, how does that change how the sales leader shows up and the kind of management and coaching that they're doing when their teams are using this? Or is it too early to see? Are you seeing an impact?
It's a little bit early, but let me just tell you a couple of stories about how some of our clients are using this. I alluded to a couple earlier, but one client in particular, they one of our earlier clients, they're a company called At Work Systems. They started with they sell contract management software
Mm.
to government contractors, which I'm quoting them. I'm not slamming that. I'm quoting them. One of them said in the early days, not everyone thinks of that as the most exciting category, so they sell contract management software to government contractors, right? And one of the things they said was, a great time for us to approach these government contractors is when they get certain types of contract, because so for instance, there is one of their a couple of theses. One of them was that when when these contractors move from an SBIR 1 type 1 grant to an SBIR type 2 grant, when they get upgraded, it comes with a lot more reporting requirements, a lot more compliance requirements. And he said, that's a great time for us to approach that. And he said, that's not data I can buy from Zoom Info or from Apollo or anything. This is data literally that we have to physically go out and look for announcements when someone's been awarded a particular grant, and so they asked, can you solve for that? Can you help us do that? Because that takes up a lot of time trying to find these signals of companies, build this list of companies that have been awarded these grants. And that's exactly the kind of thing that we do for them, right? And we actually find these companies, we research them, and we help them generate an outbound play to these companies. And so recently, I just ran some stats around, they have a small team, 3 sellers, and over a 6-month period, one of the ways we measure results is how much time did we save you? And, over a 6-month period, we saved them nearly 6,000 hours of research time, generating emails, executing sales plays automatically. So, there are other results that I think we're waiting on and we want to see more of. But my point is that, to the point earlier that we talked about early at the start of this podcast, it's about making teams more productive. And that's what we do, right? We help, we've been able to do that for this company and for others as well, is stuff like that.
Yeah, no, that's really tangible. And I think those are the kind of things that you take notice, right? Those are real savings that allow you then to focus on either additional prospecting or, better client meetings or other value-added activities. So yeah, that's a fantastic story.
If I can add to that,
yes,
Ray, to this story. So that was the initial use case, was just that, like, help us find these signals. Well, along the way, one of the things you can do with us, our AI, is you train it on your business, and you can train it as much or as little as you want. These guys went hog wild. They loaded up all their documents about how the product works, all the different, essentially their knowledge base. And we just got this anecdotal story from their marketing team just a couple of months ago, just about 6 weeks ago. They said, the lead said, what you guys don't know is I monitor our Drift chatbot on our website. And he said, about a couple of times a week, someone will ask a question related to some regulatory or contract regulatory issue. And he said, some of these are pretty complex, like they're not in our standard FAQs. And he said, in the past, I would shoot a note out to the subject matter experts on our team, to the founder, Ron, and others. Hey, what's the answer to this? And he said, I'd wait. And then, when they pick it up, he said, one day I just decided I'm going to go into this thing with our own chat part. It's called Ask Tiga. And he says, I just decided I'm just going to pop the question into Ask Tiga. And he said, it came back with a really good answer. I popped it in the reply. And ever since then, I've never had to slack my team to get the answer. And so he was, as people start using us, they're discovering these new use cases that really apply to their business. And it just, we love it because that's the whole reason we exist is we want to make sales teams, go-to-market teams more effective, more efficient, more productive. So just thought I'd share and add to that story a little bit.
Yeah, no, and the fact that it's becoming more relevant. I mean, you've trained it on your situation, so there's no one else that could answer that specific question with the context that you've given it, other than maybe the CEO or a founder, and their time is really expensive. What does that question cost to ask them to disrupt their day, and then they're the ones that have to respond? But if you can pull that information out, extract that, and use it to train your engine, now, you have access to that. So that's a great example. So just a last question to kind of wrap with, but where do you see all of this going? I guess both from a Tiga perspective and then, as it enables sales teams, but what are some of the things you're excited about and how do you see this evolving, over the next few years?
Well, yeah, I think how I see it evolving is I alluded to that earlier. I think this next 3 years, very pivotal for go-to-market organizations, especially on the sales team side. I think it's very, very pivotal because, and I think that everyone's trying to figure out the right model, the right usage. I personally don't believe that for the sales team. I think what you're going to see is more specialized, just like I was alluding earlier. ChatGPT is the Excel spreadsheet for generative AI. I do agree with you. A lot of salespeople are using it today, especially the ones that are more technically minded, but that's not the long-term answer. I mean, I really appreciate the fact that they jumped in, but the long-term answer is more specialized offerings like Tiga, like others like us are offering that is fit, that's purpose-built for the sales team, right? And so I think that's one thing you're going to see is that there's been, in the last 18 months, a lot of experimentation around ChatGPT. I think that's going to evolve to sort of discovering what's possible with products like ours. And we're not the only ones. There are other players in the space as well. And I think that a very key part of this are, and I truly mean this, are consultants and advisory services that are going to make a huge difference because if it's only about the vendors, I think we'll be left sort of stuck. But I think to really operationalize this, consultants, consultancies, advisory services are going to be a huge part of helping people understand, go beyond understanding what's possible to how do I get started? How do I actually operationalize this? How do I eventually, how do I measure results? And I think when we get to the other side, I think sales is going to be a lot better for the buyer because it'll be less rote. It'll be less about these mass market emails that we all get, right? It'll be less about that. And I'm not saying there'll be none of it, but there'll be fewer. So it's better for the buyer. And because they're going to be sold to based on sort of interactions that are meaningful. It's going to be better for the seller because they're going to be more productive. They're going to have the dirty job, so to speak, pushed off to the AI, and they can be they can do the part that the human does best, right? Which is empathy, connecting with the buyer, strategically understanding the account, that kind of thing. And then I think, overall businesses are going to be a lot more efficient. And that's a great thing to celebrate because it means that more people can scale their business using less capital, and all that is good stuff. I think it can be a trigger for a lot of growth no, I was going to say in our country, but actually I don't see, it can worldwide. I think it'll be fantastic.
Yeah. Well, I think that's a great place to leave it and a great vision for the future. Andre, thank you so much for taking the time to chat today and dive in. And I'm sure we could go for another hour if we have the time, but maybe we'll do a part 2 with this. But let's keep the conversation going. I'm sure we'll get a lot of comments and feedback on this. And again, really appreciate you joining us today.
Thank you, Ray. Thanks for the opportunity and really enjoyed this. Thanks.